Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to all of our attendees tuning in from around the world. Today's broadcast of Invisible Women in Sport is an Institute for Sport and Social Justice production. I'm your producer, Garnett L. Overby III. All guests will be muted during this production, but I encourage you to use the chat feature to ask a question or leave a comment. We will reserve time at the end to answer your questions. So now, without further ado, I would like to welcome our host, Taylor Middleton.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Invisible Women in Sport. It is season 2, episode 18 of Invisible Women in Sport. We got one more episode before Candice officially takes over. So again, I'm your host, Taylor Middleton. Today, I'm joined by the lovely Jennifer Williams, Chief Development Officer for the USA Basketball Foundation. How are you doing today, Jennifer?
I'm good, Taylor. Thank you all so much for the invitation. I want to thank Garnett for his patience and persistence, because this is something that we've been trying to coordinate since I was athletic director at Alabama State. So thank you all for sticking with me through my transition to USA Basketball.
Oh, of course. And we love having different women here on the show. So like I kind of mentioned to you the other day, we're going to go ahead and do 2 truths and a lie as our opener. So I'll go first just to keep it classy, I guess. So I'll go ahead and say my 3, and then for anybody in the audience, you can put it in the chat if you agree, which one you think is a lie, whatever. Like we always do. So my 2 truths and a lie is the only thing I ate growing up was chicken tenders. I was a really picky eater. I've moved into a new place every year since freshman year of undergrad. And then one time when I played volleyball in 7th grade, the ball hit me straight in the face, but it counted, so the play continued. And Candice will probably laugh at me about that, but yeah.
Wow, that's a tough act to follow. So let me think. So I know and can understand 3 different languages: Spanish, French, well, it's actually 4, obviously English, and Italian. Basketball is my first love, and I studied abroad in Italy during my 5th year at UNC.
Okay. So for everybody in the chat, you can keep going and say everything, whether you think whose is a lie, whose are truths for each of us, and we'll go ahead and guess. I feel like the 3rd one you said is true. So I'm gonna go with the 1st one you said as far as a lie.
The first one, what did I say was the
languages?
The languages, okay. And wrong.
In the chat we have, so people think I lied about chicken tenders. And then a few people said languages and then study abroad. So
I need to reveal my lie, yes. My Nun Truth. So the Nun Truth is that basketball was not my first love. I actually started out in baseball, and that was really, I was like the only girl that was on my dad was our little league coach. And as I played, more girls started to participate. But yeah, I actually started off playing baseball.
Wow. So you never transitioned into softball?
Or no, better? I never I think a lot has to do with coaching. I was going to play softball, but I did not particularly care for the coach and his leadership skills at the high school I attended. So I opted to run track. Oh, wow. You could appreciate that, Taylor.
I can. But yes, okay. Mine was the chicken tenders one. I actually don't like chicken tenders. I had my first good set of chicken tenders from Huey Magoo's here in Florida. But yeah, I think chicken tenders are like dry. I don't particularly like them. And I'm not a picky eater at all. So that was my lie. But the volleyball thing did happen. And it was very embarrassing. And it happened so quick, I didn't even realize what happened until after. Because everything was like black for like 2 seconds. So that's how that went. But we'll go ahead and get started. So obviously, it's a little bit interesting. You said basketball wasn't your first love, but you ended up playing on the women's team at UNC Chapel Hill. So can you talk about being in a program like that and how that was for you?
It was amazing to be a basketball student athlete at the University of North Carolina. We have a saying that, playing at Carolina is an honor, winning is a tradition. And so, that was a creed that we pretty much held to the highest. And we tried to go out and represent every day, not just on the court, but also in the classroom. Being a student was to me the first priority, because basketball's one day gonna come to an end. So it's what you're doing in the classroom that's gonna prepare you for life. So I really enjoyed my time as a student athlete. I wouldn't trade it for the world. It definitely opened my eyes to a lot. Coming from Detroit, Michigan to the South, that was really my first experience, being in the South for an extended period of time. I visited here and there, but just living down there with no family in North Carolina that I knew of at the time, it just taught me a lot about myself. And, I really appreciate that time being there.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. Moving from Pittsburgh to Florida, and I have like one aunt who lives here. She's like my mom's closest friend, like one of them. So it was just interesting, like coming back because this is where she came, not UCF, but she went to UF for grad school. So kind of joke about our past here because she played basketball at Pitt too.
Okay.
So that was something like that. But also looking into your time at UNC, you got your bachelor's in journalism and in African American studies. So did you have an interest trying to go into broadcasting? Because as we kind of talked about the other day, you did Tar Heel Sports Network and then Fox Sports South.
Yeah, so my goal, I was going to be the next Oprah Winfrey. I was going to be doing these interviews and everything. But when the School of Journalism at Carolina at the time was top 3 in the nation when I was there, and it was very competitive to get in. So when I was accepted into the School of Journalism, it was to me a remarkable accomplishment because it wasn't a lot of student athletes who went that route. A lot of the student athletes majored in communications. And so when I was into my classes and coursework, I just noticed that it was very newsy. I didn't really want to focus on the news. I wanted more of a sport element. And so I kind of, even though I still loved being a part of, the curriculum and what we learned, I just knew that that wasn't going to be my long-term goal. I was introduced to the family that pretty much endowed my scholarship, and that kind of opened my eyes to the athletic side of things, kind of with fundraising and philanthropy. But again, I was still in my coursework for journalism, and I was determined to get my degree. So, I stayed along that path, but kept my options open.
Right, right. So then even at your time there, I know we kind of talked about some of the things that you were doing when you went into your 5th year. So can you talk a little bit about that and how that kind of transitioned you more into the fundraising and like philanthropy side, like postgraduate for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So it really actually started while I was still in undergrad, playing basketball, not even my 5th year. I was really big on career mapping, and that's what I would like to tell a lot of student athletes, current student athletes. You have to think about the big picture. Your sport one day is going to come to an end, even if you go pro. What's going to be next? What are you going to have to fall back on? So while I was immersed in journalism, I always used to see our athletic director. He was always present at our home games, very involved. And you don't see that at a lot of Power 5 institutions. So we were blessed to have Dick Bador at the time was our athletic director at every home game, him and his wife. And I always used to say, I wonder what he does. I would kind of like to be like that, be like him. And I knew I never wanted to coach, no knock against coaches out there. I just didn't have the patience, and it just wasn't my desire. So that kind of was the inkling, seeing him and then meeting the donors who endowed my scholarship. That took me to that path of kind of like, what does philanthropy look like? Even though during my 5th year, I still stuck with television. The ACC office at the time invited 3 student athletes from each ACC institution to interview with different companies. I picked Fox Sports, they picked me. And so I ended up moving to Atlanta after my 5th year. And it was a very, very good experience. It taught me a lot about myself. It taught me about resiliency. It just taught me about not giving up, because I did not like my job. It was my first time in really kind of a corporate setting. But I never gave up. I showed up every day. I was, able to get the job done. I was invited back after my internship, even though I was going to be transitioning back to grad school. But it taught me to have tough skin too, which I think we'll talk more about, which definitely helped me as a executive and an athletic director. Having that tough skin and not taking things personal. That was my first introduction to that skill set while I was working at Fox Sports.
Gotcha. So then even in that time, I think the conversation of athletes transitioning out of their sport has been more prevalent nowadays, especially with COVID happening. Well, it passing in a way, but how would you say, or what would you say were your biggest challenges transitioning out of not being kind of like on a tight knit schedule, having to show up for training, having to show up for practices, like at specific times? How was that for you kind of coming out of that space?
Yeah, I'm grateful for my time for my high school. I went to Detroit Country Day, which is a college preparatory high school, and it really taught me about time management at an early age. So to me, time management is probably the top skill you need to have as a student athlete. Being able to juggle your commitments with basketball, your schoolwork. I was really big on wanting to be a student too, wanting to be amongst the student population, enjoy some of those things. Now, we couldn't enjoy everything as student athletes, but still, I felt that that's a part of the college experience, and I wanted to enjoy that. You only get to do college once as an undergrad. So, I wanted to try to get as much as I could. So really knowing how to balance my time and prioritize, that to me are two skills that I say if you are struggling with them, try to master them. But I was blessed to have been able to kind of have that skill set developed at an early age. Now, transitioning, again, back to that career mapping. You may not know what you want to do. It could change, and that's okay. But you should always try to have a plan. I look at it as a roadmap. Sometimes you go off your roadmap, but then you can always come back and see what that next stop needs to be. And be okay and know that, have that flexibility that your roadmap will change, and that's okay. But having a plan and really kind of networking, holistically networking, to me is something a lot of undergrad students don't think about while they're in college. I will say, I've come across some student athletes during my time as administrators. Candice Martin is one who's in the cohort right now, who really was articulate, and she expressed kind of what she wanted, as a junior. Now she didn't have it all figured out, but she knew kind of what her path and what her calling was. And so I can say that, tell people, speak your dreams to people, because you never know who's going to be apt to helping you. That was something that was very impressive with Candice. And we have a lot of student athletes at Alabama State who really knew kind of what they wanted to do, because at that level, not everyone's going pro. You went to Pitt, Power, I went to Carolina. You do have people going pro, but even at those institutions, you still have to have a game plan, because your pro career is only going to last so long.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's becoming a part of the conversation more so now, with as far as just student athlete development. What are those life skills that you can take after, college and everything? And I think that was a big thing for me at Pitt. One, I kind of had a situation where I was getting injured, but not injured enough to like sit out for the season. But it was like, okay, at some point, what are we going to do after this? Because if I'm getting hurt like this and I'm 20 years old, it's not going to keep going. So definitely like understanding those spaces and kind of just coming to terms with reality, like, okay, this may not last for the rest of the time. And I know for me, and obviously for Candice, like we both ended up at DeVos for a reason. Just being, and I think it's kind of funny because Candice is actually my mentee. So we always talk about these things. So it's really great just like hearing more previous administrators and current ones kind of emphasizing that when we have those conversations. But you also mentioned something about just it being okay to go off your roadmap or being in these different places. And I think one thing for you and your career is that you've been a lot of different places and you've been in a lot of different leadership roles. Like, for example, you were in NCAA Board of Governors Committee, the Black AD Alliance, and you were on Women Leaders. So just being in those spaces, like what were you trying to bring either to the table or learn from being in those positions?
Yeah, just, I'm really big on representation and how it really matters. And so really trying to show up for other young women who look like me. It is a responsibility that goes deeper than you. I didn't seek out when I came into this role. I always knew I wanted to be an AD when I got into college athletics. It was my goal to be an athletic director by the age of 40. I did it with some years to spare, but I never went into it to be on committees or, to get recognition. I just went in it to help students. To me, and that's why I really focused on being at HBCUs too, because coming from Carolina and then going to North Carolina Central for my grad studies, I saw a lot of the disparities. And I felt like, my husband, he was a student athlete at an HBCU. And so I felt that those student athletes should be able to have the same access that I had at Carolina. And it came down to resources. So, that was kind of why my passion and my role led me to working at, North Carolina A&T and Alabama State, because I wanted to give those student athletes what I had, the experiences I had. And professional development was part of it. That was something I really focused on in Alabama State, is being able to give those student athletes access to opportunities. I couldn't send all of our student athletes to certain things, but I could identify and recognize those who were those stars who needed to be there, and I made a way for them to get there. And so that was really my push and my calling, because it's about the student athletes. I was great to be on those boards. I'm grateful for the people who recognized me and nominated me for those opportunities. But that was never why I went into this business. It really was to help student athletes and to inspire other women of color and men of color and just people in general. Every time I speak or I do a presentation, I always say a prayer is that I want to be a blessing, and I hope that I can touch one person to inspire them, about keep moving forward, to keep going, because you hear a lot of no's on this path. I had people tell me that I would not be successful being a fundraiser because I was a Black woman. Because I probably should look at something more internal like compliance or academics, but that wasn't my passion. That wasn't my calling. My calling, I'm an external. I like marketing. I like fundraising. I like being around people and engaging people. That was how I could contribute to helping student athletes. And by me staying the course and not listening to the naysayers or the people who just couldn't see the big picture, I was able to have great success because I developed a niche, and I was known as someone who could go into limited resource institutions and raise money and have success with lesser budgets and less staff.
That's really great. And I think a good perspective just to hear, because you do hear about a lot of student athletes, at least I know I did for me, who will like go to HBCUs or getting recruited, and they don't see like the same things they would see at like a UNC or a Pitt or a Clemson and something like that. And it's like, oh, well, can I still be successful here? And then, you have like some schools like A&T, Howard are doing really good. I know about them more so because of their track programs, but you have schools like that who are doing really well in the sport. So I think it's just being able to provide those resources and the information to people to be like, okay, don't count them out. So even like looking at that, you made a comment like, oh, I want to be an AD by the time I was 40. You had some years to spare. And I think that's such like a great accomplishment for you, not only like just as a woman in this industry, but as a Black woman, of course. But looking at that space, I know I asked you a really hard question the other day about where you see yourself, like final position. And obviously, like all of us can't think about that. But what would that kind of role look like for you? I know you just got to USA basketball, but you never know.
Taylor trying to set me up over here. No. No. But like I shared with you yesterday, I don't have a clear position. Like when I was in my 20s, I said, yeah, I want to be an athletic director. Now I'm in my 40s, early 40, I'm 40. But no, now, I don't know. Like when I go into looking at careers, it's really about impact and influence and helping people. That's really kind of what I look at now. I can't clearly say, oh, I want to do this or be this title. I really, it's about the impact and the influence and how I can help people. That's really kind of the three things that I'm looking for right now. And I found that at USA Basketball. You know, I'm really goal oriented. I hit the goal of being an AD, and then it was kind of like, all right, what's next? And so this kind of came back. It was something new. It was an opportunity to work with a really great team. I really like our CEO. I love his vision for what he's trying to do with USA Basketball, how he's trying to move it, continue to move it forward. And then also with the foundation, which is what I oversee. So to answer your question, I don't have a specific title, but I know that it's going to be whatever I end up in, it's going to be something where I'm helping people and I'm really using sport to affect change.
Gotcha. Well, even just mentioning USA Basketball, can you talk a little bit about how you transitioned into that role and kind of like the day-to-day of being a chief development officer in that space?
Yeah. So, you know, moving into this role, it really kind of came out of nowhere. That's why I tell people do not burn bridges. Always, you know, put your best foot forward and do good work. I mean, you see the sign behind me. My husband got that for me. That's something we kind of talk a lot about. Is just do good work. People used to say when I left DePaul, why are you going to an HBCU? You're going to get stuck. You'll never be able to get out. But I'm really, I bet on myself. And I know I'm the real deal. So I knew that was false. And then secondly, I feel like if you do good work, people are going to notice you. And one of the sayings I have is blossom where you're blossom where you're planted. That's something I've been saying since grad school. I truly believe that if you are a rock star and you're marketing yourself, your personal brand, people are going to gravitate toward you and they're going to find you. Now, like I said, this position, I had a friend who worked for another national governing body. We met through Women Leaders in College Sport. We were in the same cohort for leadership training. And she reached out to me just to have a conversation with the CEO. This was back in 2020, the end of 2020. I was like 6 months pregnant. I wasn't really thinking about, you know, I knew something was coming next, but I wasn't thinking about this being the next. And so had a conversation. I actually gave some names of other people for the position. I thought it was a cool position. At that time, I'm thinking about how do I get my student athletes back to play safely, because we're going through the pandemic in January and I'm 6 months pregnant. So trying to have a healthy pregnancy. So job wasn't really thinking of that, you know, and making sure everything's good while I'm on a maternity leave. Those were like my top three. Had my son in January. It came back to me that, you know, the position was about to post, that, you know, the CEO, he really liked me. And, you know, if there was now, you know, that I've had my son, more interest. And I kind of, you know, I look at things like, you know, God is trying to tell me something. I believe, and, you know, I'm definitely, I lead by faith. And so I was like, you know, I need to slow down and really look, because this has come back to me now again. And so have more conversations, and I really like the fit, the culture. It aligned with my core values. And I tell people all the time, know your core values, because it's really about fit with companies, organizations. So everything just kind of came together. And so it was hard to leave my position as athletic director, because I really love my student athletes, still support them just from afar. But then also the people that I hired and I brought with me. So walking away from that. But, you know, change is inevitable. And if you're trying to grow, that's part of it. And so I felt like this position with USA Basketball, it really gave me an opportunity to give back to the sport that I love. Not everyone's going to go pro and be an Olympian, but the skills that you learn as an athlete, as a basketball athlete, it teaches you how to be a pro in life, how to be a champion in life. And so that's what it was about to me, really on the grassroots level, getting out there, talking and sharing our narrative about what we're doing in our communities, what we're doing with our youth, how we're building champions in life, not just in the sport, but in life. And then ultimately raising money to support these programs. Our three pillars: we want to champion women, we want to empower youth, and then we want to promote social responsibility. And those three things, they resonated with me. I'm big on promoting, social responsibility. I talked to our student athletes a lot about it when I was an athletic director. And then champion women. Obviously, I'm a women leader. So, and you all on the call are women leaders. So, I'm big on how do we get more women into sport, because while we've made strides, there's still a long way to go. And then empowering our youth. I hate to be cliche, but the children are our future. And if they don't have guidance, and if they don't have support, if they don't learn skills at a young age, then, or, skills like teamwork, dedication, hard work, then who's going to lead us when we're in our older age? So, I really believe in paying it forward. And so this just kind of aligned with everything that I believed in. And again, basketball, it goes back to the core. This sport has given me so much, and now I have an opportunity to give back.
Well, you definitely make it sound intriguing. And I feel like with the amount of people I've spoken to about you, or I've mentioned you, you're a great person to work under and work for. So I'm sure after this call, there will be a few people trying to reach out to you for a job. But just to keep moving, you kind of touched on some of those things about like obstacles and things being in the Deep South when you like previously with Fox Sports South, and then also just being in those spaces as a woman, as a Black woman. Can you talk about some of those obstacles you may have faced and how you overcame them to kind of continue on the path that you're on right now?
Yeah, that's a great question, Taylor. It was absolutely hard being an athletic director. I think that people didn't know what I went through, because I'm not the type of person to, I'm just not a negative person. And I've learned, being a student athlete, there's no point of harping on things. You got to figure out a way to get things done. And so I felt like, just being in the Deep South and being a leader, people weren't ready to accept that. And there were internal struggles as well as external. I remember, going to an event at a campus, one of our sister institutions, and I was told by a person they wouldn't talk to me. They would only talk to my deputy athletic director, who was a man, because they don't speak to women. And this is 2019, excuse me, when this happened. And, I've had people question, that I'm really the athletic director. I've been asked about credentials. And I said, I may not be the traditional mode of what you're used to seeing. I may not dress how you think an athletic director to dress. I like to say I'm the cool AD, but, or was the cool AD, but, I'm still, it was just a lot of disrespect I felt. But again, it goes back to knowing who you are as a person. I've always been a very confident person. Don't ever let anyone dim your light because they have issues. Keep shining. And, you have to do things with a smile. Like, I was able to accomplish a lot of things. There were a lot of internal challenges and struggles, but you never let them see you sweat. And I was able to have a tremendous amount of success with limited staffing, other obstacles, because people didn't know how to perceive a woman in a leadership role, a woman who was very direct and asked a lot of questions, because that's just how I was raised. I'm from Detroit. We ask questions and we are direct and to the point. And in the South, it's a little different. And I understood that, and I was accommodating to that. But at the end of the day, it was about my student athletes and my coaches and my staff, and making sure that Alabama State was always represented in a great light. And I tell people all the time, don't get into this for the accolades or the money, because that takes time. It's a lot of hard work. Athletics is not a 9 to 5. That's been kind of the main thing I've seen the difference between transitioning over. I was so used to getting emails at midnight or talking to my deputy at 1 a.m, and just that doesn't happen like that. Like on the weekend, my email doesn't ring unless I'm getting a donation. And so that's a transition that I just wasn't used to. But athletics is not a 9 to 5. You have to have tough skin, always lead with integrity. I never lost any sleep at night because I knew I was always doing right by people and our student athletes. Always keep, focus of your why, what's most important to you, and lead through that way. I knew that making sure my student athletes graduated, that they were prepared to come out and be successful contributing adults to the world and to society. Those were my top focus. The winning of the championships will come if you do those things. And so just like as coaches, if you know your kids, if you know your student athletes care, they're going to run through a wall for you. I felt like my student athletes knew I cared. I felt like for the most part, my coaches did. They may not have liked everything I shared with them, but at the end of the day, we won 43 championships during my time in Alabama State. And, that's something that not a lot of people can say. We won 6 Commissioner's Cups. We were a runner-up last year, my last year, but we had a team that opted out and we only lost by 4 points to win it then. So we were in contention. So, I tell people, just stay the course. Stay the course. If this is something you're passionate about, if it's something you want to do, if it was easy, everyone would do it. And so know that it's not going to be easy, but know that if you align yourself with champions, with mentors, a core group of individuals who, as your backbone, as your tribe, you're going to be okay.
Well, you see how y'all, she just dropped in at 43 championships. You see that? But as you saw,
a humble brag, and I saw Candice up there like, period, yes. Candice got a lot of those rings. I don't think Candice lost a SWAC championship during her time at Alabama State in volleyball.
Okay.
So,
she said
one. Oh, one. I'm sorry. Okay, I wasn't there then. You won every time I was.
Well, thank you so much just for being here with us today. I'm coming up on my last question. So for the audience, please drop your questions in the chat for the Q&A after with Jennifer and Candice following me. So like, as I said before, thank you so much just for being here with us today. And we're going to go ahead and wrap up. So with that being said, like any other show, I always ask at the end, what is just some advice you could give to women, whether they're older or younger, who are walking into this sports industry space, or just how they can move along that path and navigating that?
Taylor, you always just, so your questions are just so right on time and so good. So no, I would say to that, I will say, to be confident in your skills, know that you belong at whatever table you're in or at, and then to own your dopeness. That's something I've been saying a while. I think as Black women, sometimes we try to shy away from our greatness that's within because we are scared that our light sometimes shines too bright. That's okay. You aren't made for everyone in every situation. So that's why I'm really big on finding your fit, but never dull your light to make someone else feel better. Own your dopeness, lead with grace and authority, and lead in love. Care about people. If you care about your people, they're going to work extremely hard for you in any capacity, whether if you're leading as an athletic director, leading as a CEO, if you're just a director and you have grad assistants, care about your people. And always try to pay it forward. That was something I didn't have a lot when I was coming up as a young professional. I think that, sometimes the women felt maybe when I was coming up that it could only be one of us there, but I've seen it get so much better where the mentorship is there and women are wanting to see other women succeed. And I just think that's a beautiful thing. So always pay it forward as well.
Well, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Candice for our Q&A so she can wrap up these questions for you and we can all get out of here. So I'm going to give it to Candice now for Q&A.
Hi, thanks again, Jennifer, for joining us today. And for those of you who don't know, I am a former student athlete under Jennifer, so I know her as A.D. Williams, so it's a little weird now. So everything that she has shared today, I can definitely attest to. And it's just weird how small the world is and how things will just come back to us. So I would like to open up with my first question. So I would like to start with, it's a common disbelief that HBCU staff get stuck in HBCU institutions and conference offices. Being that you have moved to USA basketball from the Alabama State University, what advice or words of wisdom would you give those individuals to decode that myth?
Yeah, like I had shared earlier, you have to know you and be confident in your skill set. When I left DePaul, And I loved DePaul. Only I left because there was just no room for growth. But I had a lot of people tell me, why would you leave DePaul, you know, the largest Catholic institution in the Big East, to go to North Carolina A&T? And it was crazy because it was coming from people who were HBCU grads, and I couldn't believe it. And so I just think that, you know, I've always been a confident person, and I'm very confident in my skill set. And I believe that if you work hard and you put in the work, good things will happen. Good things happen to good people. Just do the work. And people will find you. And that's something that I've always carried with me. I didn't let working at North Carolina A&T or Alabama State be something where I shied away from opportunity because I didn't feel like I belonged. I felt like I belonged to sit right at the table with the AD of Alabama, and I did. At football oversight, we were all on the same committee for football oversight, and I felt like I belonged there. And so, you know, it's all about how you carry yourself and the confidence. If you act like you don't belong, people will treat you like you don't belong. So definitely, you know, be confident in your skills, be a lifelong learner, connect yourself with individuals who genuinely want to see you grow, who are smarter than you. You know, I try to be around people who are smarter than me, who possess different skill sets than I do. Like, I'm kind of like all over, like, I'm a procrastinator, but I know, like, as comes my journalist, I know how to get stuff done. But I try to surround myself with people, like my best friend is more focused and grounded, and she's very like structured. And so, like, you know, it's a balance to things. So I talk to her about things, but just try to always be a lifelong learner and know that you belong at that table.
Absolutely. Thank you. I believe you instilled that in me, because I want to say when I applied for the NCAA postgraduate internship program, it was like, all right, not a lot of HBCU grads probably put themselves in the hat, but I'm going to throw my name in there. So absolutely.
You are our first, Candice. You are our first at Alabama State. I hope you will not be the last. I think you were the first out of the SWAC conference as well. So that was a big accomplishment, because you don't see a lot of HBCU student athletes getting that opportunity. I mean, the NCAA postgraduate scholar, internship is the top, you know, that's upper echelon. So I was super, super proud of you. And a quick story. I remember, Candice, I was the deputy athletic director at this time in Alabama State. And I remember you came in and you were like, hey, you know, I want to like fundraise for volleyball. And I'm like, who is this girl? And I'm like, yeah, let's sign her up. But that's the kind of know-it-all. That's the kind of confidence you have. Candice didn't know me. Like, I think that was like our first introduction, but you know, I didn't forget Candice, and any type of thing we had that came down the pipeline from the NCAA or internship opportunities. I was like, all right, Candice Martin, let's go ahead. Like, you know, so those are like, you have to shoot your shot. I tell, you know, just like HBCUs not recruiting these Power Five, and we talked a little bit, or these 4-star athletes, shoot your shot. You know, just like Candice shot her shot for the NCAA postgraduate internship, you just never know what's going to happen.
Absolutely. So we're going to go to a few of our questions in the chat. The first comes from Iane. She's one of my classmates here in the DeVos program. Her question is, during your time at your first job, you mentioned that you didn't like it. How did you find motivation to continue to show up every day and blossom during your time there?
Whew, it was a lot of prayer, a lot of self-talks and chats in the mirror, like, let's go, you got this. But I think that comes with being a student athlete. Like I say, being a student athlete is an experience that I'm so grateful for. I tell people all the time that I wouldn't have been able to lead a department, 18 sports, 350 plus student athletes through a pandemic if I wouldn't have been a student athlete. It teaches you never to quit, never to give up. There was times I wanted to quit so many times at Carolina when I couldn't make the mile. It was like, they told me 7 minutes, and I was a big girl. You know, I was a power four. So they said 7 minutes. And so I'm just like, I want to give up. I want to quit. But, you know, my dad always used to tell me, you only can control what you can control. And so at the end of the day, you have to control your attitude. I had to really adjust how I was thinking things through. I knew that I wasn't going to be there forever, but I was determined not to quit. And so, prayer, self-talk, self-chat, a lot of meditation, but just don't quit. I tell people it could always be worse. I was blessed to have income coming in. And again, it goes back to career mapping. The best time to look for a job is when you have one. So I immediately started applying myself.
Absolutely. I see Taylor cracking up at the mile. At Alabama State, it was a 7.5 minute mile. And I was really stressed because Coach Penny, I was like, I'm a big girl.
I'm a big girl. Like, they tried to give me 6:45, and I was like, no. I'm a lot bigger than the fours that you guys recruit. They're like 6'3", 160 pounds. I'm 6'1", 185. So I'm gonna need that center 7-minute time at the time. But yes, the mile in the blue track at Carolina, I still have nightmares when I walk past it. Yeah. I saw it this weekend and I was like,
nope. Definitely. So our next question comes from one of our producers, Matt Elson, and he asks, can you talk about the importance of having both mentors and champions?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we had talked a little bit on our pre-call about, how did you get these opportunities to be on these committees and these kind of exclusive committees and everything. And it really was because I had champions. And mentors, you talk to, you strategize, but champions are people who are in the room, who are advocating for you that you may not even know. And I am blessed that people recognize the work that I was putting in, that I had, led with integrity, and that I genuinely cared about our student athletes. And that's how I was able to get into a lot of these settings that I didn't see. I just, again, do the work, do good work, like my sign said. Oh, it's over there. Do good work. So, and that's, to me, like, that's the biggest thing. And I think people will recognize that and they will advocate for you. And those are the people who are champion for you. Those are, that's the people who are really speaking on your behalf when you may not have access to those rooms.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. All righty. We have Commissioner McWilliams on the call of the CIAA. And her question is, anything you wish you could have done differently along your way?
Yes. So I will say that when I first got into the business, I really wish that I would have taken the time to learn all facets of the athletic department instead of just focusing on fundraising and the benchmarks we had. I think that would have helped me understand more when I became the AD about how the compliance unit really, keeps things going. Well, I only focused on money. That was where I was, at the majority of my career. I didn't look at the academic piece or the compliance. And I knew academics and compliance, you need them, but I didn't really understand how much. So I think as a younger professional, get to know all the inner workings of a department. While you have to focus on doing your job, be understanding that it takes every unit to make a total team effort and to have success. And you can't just raise all the money, but have a poor compliance office. You're going to be prone to get some NCAA violations. Or you can't have a robust SID department and not have academics doing well. Mm-hmm. So really learning all of the inner workings of a department, being open to those conversations with people to see what their day-to-day looks like, because that helps you be a better leader. I do think that if I would have done that at an earlier time in my life, I would have been able to be a more effective leader when I did step into the role as the interim athletic director.
Absolutely. It's quite funny that you say that, because right now I feel like I'm going through growing pains, because all while I was in undergrad was championship operations. But now I'm the host and training for Invisible Women in Sports. So now a lot of people are speaking broadcast into my future. And then there's also sponsorships and activations. And then there's also interest in being a high school athletic director. It's like, all right. So it's like everybody's been Candice, like, do it all, try it all, do it. I'm like,
be open. And I tell people, be open to it. Like, I'm open to, I think Taylor asked the question about what's next. I'm open to, I'm locked in here, but moving forward, I'm open to the right opportunity. You have to be flexible. That's why I said that roadmap, it can change, it can fluctuate, it can shift, but you need to have something locked in on paper that you can always go back to.
Absolutely. Next question comes from Jocelyn Logan, and her question is, how do you diversify and build your skill set to transition from communications to athletic leadership?
That's a good question. So to me, I'm all about transferable skills. I knew that working in television would not hinder me transitioning to being an athletic administrator. It would only help, because as athletic directors, senior staff members, you have to be able to articulate and tell the story. And I knew that I was going to start in fundraising. So I had to be able to communicate to donors the needs of our department, whether it was through the student athlete's voice, through our AD's voice, through our coach's voice. I had to be able to articulate that, whether it was written or verbal. So, being a student athlete also helped too, because I kind of saw some of the inner workings while I was going, while I was at Carolina. But really, going to North Carolina Central was the best decision I made for grad school. I had an opportunity to go anywhere. I always wanted to go to an HBCU. And as I shared with you all yesterday, is that no HBCU recruited me. If A&T, Howard, Hampton, FAMU would have came, I definitely would have considered, because I went to a predominantly white high school, and I just have always wanted to. So I knew for grad school, I was going to an HBCU. Like, it was non-negotiable. I'd already made some connections, and that's why we talk about intentional, building those intentional relationships with people. So I was able to get a lot of hands-on experience at North Carolina Central because their department was small. They were transitioning from D2 to D1 during my time there. So I actually started in the SID. Like, I was working with their SID, but I just knew that wasn't for me. And so from there, I kind of started talking to the marketing director, talking to the development director, and it just was like a match made in heaven. My knowledge of sport, me being able to tell and articulate the student athlete experience, because I was younger then. And so that helped on donor visits. That helped with some of the communication. So just jumping in, like I talk about being open, willing to do whatever. I mean, like I said, I was PA in a game one day, actually a couple games I had to serve as a PA, keeping stats, doing the events for fundraising. Just try to do as much as you're young. I mean, that's what my dad used to tell me, do as much when you're younger, so that when you get like my age, you can kind of have it somewhat figured out and kind of know, not necessarily coast, but be in a situation where you put in that really, really hard grinding work. I think I see a lot of younger professionals who don't want to grind. When I left grad school, I thought I was going to be making like $50,000, $60,000. This was like in 2008. I came out making $18,000. I took an internship with women leaders in Wilmington, North Carolina, which is expensive to live because it's a beach town. So I was working like 3 jobs. I was working as a community support specialist. I was working at Women Leaders. I was refereeing, basketball games. I was doing it all, but I had the support, and I didn't have family then, so I could do it. But you got to be willing to grind, because athletics is don't get in it for the money. Get in it because you love what you do and you want to see growth and development in those who matter, and that's those student athletes.
Absolutely. Thank you. Our next question comes from Iris Thomas, and her question is, what do you think is a good way to fundraise for underbudgeted institutions? And what was one of your most successful fundraisers?
That's a good question. So, you have to do a lot of things electronically. We cut out a lot of the mailers because that's just a lot of money. And what I saw at a lot of HBCUs is that record keeping is pretty poor. So I'm not going to waste money on mailings if it's going to get returned. So really utilizing social media, emails, trying to get, to me, that was a lot. That's what we did a lot. Developing a giving platform. When I came into North Carolina A&T, they had a lot of different groups that was raising money on behalf of the university, but it was nothing formal. And so you have to have a formal platform. And that was something I developed, was that formal platform through the Aggie Athletic Foundation. And so, and then you have to determine whether your institution is more focused on transactional fundraising or philanthropic fundraising. At North Carolina A&T, a lot of it was based around football season ticket sales, was how a lot of our donor base, and we were able to get people to give because they had access to get their tickets in a certain amount of time and in certain locations. At Alabama State, it was more philanthropic. We didn't have seat donations. So it really was about, hey, how do I help the student athlete? Now, some different campaigns we put in was Giving Tuesday. We started doing a day of giving at each of those institutions. And then just fundraising around different events. We wanted to be more visible. So we did coaches caravans where we took our coaches to our different alumni chapters, got them on the road instead of alumni having to come to us. And through those events, we talked about fundraising. We were able to raise some good money. Now, there were more things, but those are kind of two that stood out.
Absolutely. Thank you. And the last question I have is, after a successful career in fundraising, multiple commissioner cups at Alabama State University, and securing a highly desirable role now at USA Basketball, and much more accomplishments that you have experienced over your professional career, what are you most proud of?
I'm most proud of being able to do all of those things and still keep the value of family number one. I have two children, a 6 and a 10-month-old. And then, I've been married, my husband now, who's an HBCU grad. We met actually at North Carolina Central for 9 years. And so, that was one thing that I was concerned about coming into athletics, because I didn't see women who were married, who had families, who were leading departments or conference offices. So to be able to accomplish that and have success, that's probably the most thing I'm really proud of, because I hope to inspire other women to know that they can do it. I really believe that we can have it all. It's just figuring it out. I don't believe in work-life balance. I believe in work-life integration. So my kids were at everything. I feel like Harper's definitely going to go to an HBCU. That's all she's known. She was born when I was at A&T, and she grew up at Alabama State. So, just being able to immerse my kids in what I do, and have a family, and thankful that my partner gets it. It's a lot what we do, but you got to have the right partner supporting you. That's something I've been really proud of, because I just didn't see that coming up as a young professional.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That concludes our Q&A for today.
Thank you, Candice,
guys.
for that. And also, I was saying the track in me was laughing because for our practices, we had a uphill trail that we had to run. It was like 2.5 miles. And we had to do that like every practice during conditioning season. And it was terrible. And also, Pitt is in the mountains. So everywhere is a hill. Nothing is flat.
Chapel Hill, so I understand.
everything is a hill. My mom calls it, there's a hill going up to the Peterson Event Center where the basketball arena is, and they called it Cardiac Hill where she was, because it's literally just like this. And it's like a whole like road up. It's awful. So completely understand that. But thank you so much for just being here with us today and speaking with us and sharing your wisdom and knowledge, just moving through the space of sport and just obviously giving people a little bit more insight on what's that been like for you and being in various positions. So we really, really appreciate it.
Well, again, I thank you, Taylor. I'm so excited that we met, and I'm excited to follow your career. You're with some good people. I don't know if you made the announcement, but I'm excited for you. Candice, I continue. We don't talk every day, but I got my tabs on you. I know what you're doing. And so I'm excited to follow you all. It's inspiring to see, you younger women of color doing these great things. And then thank you to Garnett, again, for his persistence and patience, because I know it was a handful trying to track me down and get me, but thank you. I was like, we're doing this before 2021 is out. So thank you all for having me.
Yes, so we're gonna go ahead and close out the episode with some of our closing statements as usual. So everyone, please tune in on December 2nd. That will be my last episode with everyone. We don't have someone confirmed yet, but it's in the works. So it'll still be a great episode regardless of who we have. Again, thank you for being here with us, Jennifer. And then also follow us on all of our social media platforms. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn at Institute SSJ. Of course, we thank you for all your support of Invisible Women in Sport. We are a nonprofit organization with other programs that impact various social justice issues. Please use the QR code below to show support with a financial gift as we continue to change lives through the power of sport. And then for our credits, of course, again, thank you to our guest, Jennifer Williams, our producer, Garnett L. Overby III, senior advising consultant, Matt Edelson, and all of our graduate assistants, Larissa Campello, Maya King, Candice Martin, Iane Miranda, and Olivia Wiggins. And a special thank you to all our guests for staying with us throughout this time and continuing to support Invisible Women in Sport. Again, please follow us on all social media platforms at Institute SSJ. If you miss an episode, you can follow up on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube to get any of the shows you might have missed or couldn't be there for in real time. And then again, viewers, we need your feedback as always. You will be receiving a brief survey after the episode just to fill out and let us know what you think so we can keep the shows better and better every single time. We are still getting a lot of inquiries about if we have connections to internships. So if any of our supporters or members have internships available, please send your information to our producer, Garnett Overby, at goverby@ucf.edu so we can send to the people reaching out to us. And again, please stay tuned for our last episode before Candice takes over for our next season on Thursday, December 2nd at 2 p.m. And then, of course, we got the holidays coming up. So everybody, please be safe. Please drive safe. Enjoy time with your families. And also thank you for continuing to support Invisible Women in Sport this entire year. And if you continue on. So thank you so much. I'm your host for Invisible Women in Sport Zoomcast, and see us now. Bye, everyone. Have a good day and enjoy the holidays.